Welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour, and I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County branch of the American Association of University Women, one of the civic partners for this show. Today we have a conversation with Steve Todd, the Jefferson-Lewis BOCES Superintendent. Joining us is Carvill, an education blogger. Steve, welcome to North Country Matters. I should say welcome back to North Country Matters. This is, I think, maybe the third or fourth time we've had you on the show.
Well, thank you, Donna. It's always great to be back among friends, and it's always a fun conversation.
Well, since the last time you were here with Ann and I, you have a new job. You've moved from Assistant Superintendent for Instruction at St. Lawrence-Lewis BOCES to the Superintendent at the Jefferson-Lewis BOCES, and we actually have a map of Steve's new district that we'll ask you to put up as a graphic. That's a big district, Steve.
It is. I mean, we're often referred to as Jefferson-Lewis BOCES as the abbreviated name, but our full name is Jefferson-Lewis Hamilton-Herkimer-Oneida BOCES, because our 18 component districts are in those 5 counties. 11 of them are in Jefferson County, 4 of them are in Lewis County, and then 1 each in Oneida, Hamilton, and Herkimer counties. It's 3,300 square miles. If you took the states of Rhode Island and Delaware and put them together, it's a little bit bigger than that. So it's a vast territory, and I've enjoyed driving all over it. Since I started July 1, I've been in the car a lot, as you could imagine, visiting those districts. I'm close now to my second visit to each of the districts, and I'm looking forward to getting out for a third round of visits as soon as I finish the second round. So.
Tell us how many tech centers you have, Steve, that is spread across that district.
Yeah, we have 2 technical centers, one in Watertown, the Bolin Technical Center, and one in Glenfield, just outside of Lowville, the Howard G. Sackett Technical Center. So the center in Watertown serves the 11 districts in Jefferson County, and the center in Glenfield serves the other 7 districts.
Okay, so it's a little different than, same number of districts actually as what you used to work with here in St. Lawrence, but spread out very different. So what are the challenges and what are the opportunities that you found working in this new district?
Well, the obvious challenge is when you have a vast geography and you have a distance between people, what we do is to help bring people together to collaborate and cooperate on mutual projects. And when you're trying to get people to collaborate and cooperate, and the distance from one end of the supervisory district to the other is 2.5 hours drive one way, that's a challenge. But some of the...
That's in good weather.
In good weather, exactly. Which I guess we have to point out, Tug Hill Plateau is in there, and we have some of the highest snowfall in the eastern part of the United States there, which presents another challenge. But opportunities. When you have that level of diversity, of not just geography, but also of economy and activities and population and experiences, we have opportunities within our supervisory district to teach each other a good deal. We have a small city. We have some of the most rural areas in the state, and we all work together, so we can all teach each other things. And then it also motivates us, I think, to use technology wherever possible, which is, I think, a great opportunity.
You know, your neighboring district on the other side is the Oswego County Board of BOCES, and they've just announced a new name change. They're going to be known as the Center for Instruction, Technology, and Innovation, kind of a SciTi, I guess, is their little abbreviated name. Is that a good or maybe even a better description for the kind of work that BOCES are now doing in places like the North Country than perhaps just as the Board of Cooperative Education Services?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there are 37 BOCES regions and BOCES around the state. And I think all of us have had those internal conversations about how do we get the word out to everybody in the community and in the state about the vast array of things that each BOCES does. Board of Cooperative Educational Services, I think, has 2 critical words in it that help everyone to understand what we do. Cooperative and service, that we bring people together to do collaborative, cooperative efforts, to do together what they can do more effectively, more efficiently, more cost-effectively together. And we are first and foremost servants to our students and our districts. So I think that name helps to describe our vision, our mission, and who we are about as well as anything can. But there's a challenge in that if you ask the average person in any community around the state, what do BOCES do? Most people will identify our service to students with special needs and our vocational education, what we refer to as career and technical ed. So many BOCES have started to sort of struggle with how do we ensure that everybody knows that we do a great many things, including career and technical ed and special education, but also a vast array of other services. So years ago, some other BOCES changed their names to try and better educate their own communities about their activities. Questar 3 BOCES down in the Hudson Valley is an example. The BOCES station in Plattsburgh, they refer to themselves as the Champlain Valley Educational Services, Genesee Valley Educational Services, and now CITI in Oswego. Our own BOCES is undergoing right now a strategic planning process being led by a very skilled facilitator. In our initial meetings, we've been discussing who are we, what do we want our vision and mission to be, how do we want to be known, how do we want to market ourselves. And I have not sensed, and I have not personally felt any need to change our name, because our brand name, and I think the same is true in St. Lawrence County for the St. Lawrence Lewis BOCES. The brand name of BOCES is so strong. We're very proud to call ourselves BOCES. We're very proud to highlight that cooperative and the service part of who we are. So I don't see our name changing anytime soon.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Now we have some questions about the Common Core.
Okay.
When you worked in St. Lawrence Lewis as the Assistant Superintendent for Instruction, you were very involved with the Common Core. And as we know, the Common Core, one of their goals is to have students career ready and college ready.
Yes.
And so in the region that you're now serving, there are a lot of military families, and you also have many students in poor rural schools that are suffering from educational funding cutbacks. Are they measuring up or having trouble measuring up to these more rigorous standards?
That's a great question, Ann, and I think I'd separate it into two pieces as I address that. I'd look at the Common Core side of it, and I'd look at the adequacy of educational funding side of the question. So on the former part of that, the Common Core, what we're seeing is now in the 5th year of the 12-year rollout of the Common Core, in the implementation process, we've now started to see some year-to-year data that allows us to measure progress. Our region is, I think, very much in line with what we've seen around the state. We are seeing progress on the math side that is quite impressive, and we're seeing some uneven progress on the English language arts side of things, meaning we're seeing some spikes here and maybe some slower growth there. But all of this affords us an opportunity to see where the greatest growth is. Let's study the best practices. Let's study the strategies that are going to allow us to make that growth over the next 7 years of the 12-year rollout more even for everybody. So I think on the Common Core side of things, we're very pleased with what we've seen. Ironically, sort of the inverse of what I'd like to talk about in the second half of things is when we've seen the level of growth around the state, some of the most impressive growth in the first few years of the Common Core rollout has been in rural and poorer areas. Some of the less marked growth has been in some of the more affluent parts of the state. And I think there are probably a variety of reasons for that. But we're very pleased to see that I think when done right, and our people have been doing it, I believe, with great fidelity here in the North Country, that the Common Core reform movement, though painful, though difficult, is starting to help us to move our kids forward. Now, on the second side of that, the adequacy of educational funding, there is no question that there still remains a tremendous gap between the opportunities provided to kids in our part of the state versus the opportunities provided in more affluent parts of the state. And that does indeed put our kids at a competitive disadvantage. When a student has had opportunities to potentially take as many as 40 different AP classes in some districts, and then we have some districts that have none, no question in my mind, and that's mostly a question of educational funding opportunities. There's no question that our kids are put at a competitive disadvantage because of that.
Steve, when you were speaking, you mentioned something about you look at areas where there's a spike in growth and you see what they're doing there. When you look there, do you generally find some isolated, excellent teachers, or is it much bigger than a few good teachers having a good result? Is it you know.
Are there districts that have figured this out, I guess, right? No-
We're so early in this process. I think that it would be, I can't even really generalize what we're seeing from play. In many cases, it's, yes, an excellent team of teachers and an individual teacher. In some cases, it's a particular curricular approach that they've taken. I don't think there's any one generalized best practice that we've isolated yet, but I'll give you an example. Watertown City School District, one of our largest districts in Jefferson-Lewis BOCES, has 5 elementary schools. And one of those elementary schools, North Elementary, which is in the northern part of the city, with some of the poorest students in the city, is the state actually did an analysis of among districts that had a level of poverty between, say, 50% free and reduced lunch eligibility to 80% free and reduced eligibility, and they did it at all various bands of socioeconomic opportunity. How did districts stack up on growth? North Elementary School was at the top of the list for the entire state for the amount of growth in math and English language arts for students' performance from last year to this year. Now, we're just beginning to study that as a region, and I know the whole state is as well. There are great opportunities for all of us as we begin to isolate the variables that we think can help to explain why that happened there so that it could happen not only at the other 4 schools in Watertown, but at all of the elementary schools and all of the places around the state where we want to see that kind of growth.
So that's really an exciting, it's an exciting opportunity for you to be leading in that particular way, and certainly for a population that in a lot of cases you wouldn't expect to see success like that. To see that overcoming the poverty issues and some of the other issues tells you that the Common Core is really it's going to open that door to opportunity regardless of where a student lives or where they go to school, if it's done right.
I agree. And one thing I would add is we don't want to live or die on a one-year snapshot of numbers. And I would emphasize as well that these measures of success that we see in student performance on the English language arts and math 3 through 8 assessments and the Regents exams, those are just one indicator of success. And every good educator knows that there are many good measures, many good metrics, many good indicators of success. So we need to really dig down beyond those more obvious surface level indicators and look at all of the really good things that go on in schools.
Steve, you also mentioned funding problems, which anyone who's been paying attention knows that there are tremendous funding problems for small rural schools. Do you see any possibility of all the rural schools that are underfunded in New York State uniting and maybe having some clout in that unity?
I think that would be a wonderful thing. There are advocacy groups right now that whose goal it is to make that happen. The Rural Schools Association is one, headquartered at Cornell University, and they work with rural parts of the state. Our own districts here in the North Country are actively involved in that. Rick Timms, who is the leader of the statewide school finance consortium, is probably the most vocal and one of the most effective advocates for poor rural schools, but all schools in the state. So certainly there's a degree of advocacy that takes place through those partnerships, and many, if not most of our districts in this part of the state belong to the statewide school finance consortium. We even find that some of our greatest partnerships come not just from rural partners, but from some urban partners. Mike Rebell, who led, you may remember several years ago, the Campaign for Fiscal Equity. He's New York City man through and through, and started out his advocacy efforts looking at the underfunding of New York City schools. And that lawsuit ended up, when successful, leading to reforms in school funding in the late 1990s that benefited all underfunded schools, including ours up here in the North Country. So rural and urban schools have more in common when it comes to school funding than we differ on. And Mike Rebell has a follow-up lawsuit right now where he's broadened his group of plaintiffs to include some rural North Country schools, some small city schools, and New York City schools. So I think that level of advocacy you're talking about exists, and if we could make it universal, it would make our voices even more effective.
The final point I guess I'll make on Common Core is in your particular BOCES region, you have urban schools like Watertown, and you have, as we mentioned, rural schools. How are things going given the dichotomy between those two with regards to the Common Core standards and being able to meet them?
Well, it's interesting. We have, as St. Lawrence-Lewis BOCES has, we have a regional network team and regional support system through Jefferson-Lewis, Hamilton, Herkimer, Oneida BOCES, which is designed to meet the needs of the big and the small alike. There are definite challenges when it comes to, when you've got a district, Inlet Common School is our smallest district, 30 kids. It's one of a handful of remaining common schools, what you would think of as a traditional one-room schoolhouse type school in Inlet, New York. Another small school, Town of Webb in Old Forge, 200 kids, K-12. And then we've got Indian River with about 4,300 kids, Watertown with about 4,000, Carthage with about 3,700. So similar needs in some ways, different needs in other ways. But we have, through our cooperative efforts with our network team, through cooperative grant opportunities that we've come together on, to the Strengthening Teacher Leader Effectiveness Grant, the Teaching is the Core Grant, where we're building capacity in the field. It's becoming less a question of the experts at BOCES serving everybody out there, and more a question of the BOCES helping to facilitate the development of some homegrown capacity inside each district to carry the reform forward. And the same is going forward here in St. Lawrence County, I know, with their Strengthening Teacher Leader Effectiveness and Teaching is the Core efforts. That's, in my opinion, the way to do it, and we, I believe, are leading the state in building in sort of job-embedded capacity in the districts that will carry this forward.
Thank you.
That's good news. And I know you were instrumental in, we talked earlier, I guess it was last year, about the grant that you were helped to oversee that put some of that into place. So that's good to know. Steve, one of the things we wanted to chat with you a little bit about is STEM education, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. Particularly what those activities look like in the Jeff Lewis district, both at the district level and across your BOCES region, and what you're able to support with your two tech centers. I read an article earlier this year about what a great focus there is on STEM in some of the schools in your BOCES region. So tell us a little bit about what you folks are doing with STEM in your region.
Sure. One very exciting initiative right now relates to another grant opportunity, one that we did collaboratively between St. Lawrence-Lewis BOCES and Jefferson-Lewis Hamilton Herkimer Oneida BOCES. There was a program, and still is, called Virtual Advanced Placement, VAP. There was a round of grants last year. Nobody north of the Thruway was awarded any monies on that. So we decided when this second round of monies were made available earlier in the year, $3 million for the entire state in this next round, we were going to shoot for the moon as a 36-district consortium and go for half of that money. And we put together a very bold request for $1.5 million to help in the development of hybrid blended online coursework opportunities for kids, not just in advanced placement, but other types of enriched learning experiences, some of them AP, some of them other. And we were successful. So with that money this year, we're working to create, with teams of teachers, coursework, much of it in the STEM area, but not all of it. And the first example of a course that we've already rolled out through that is specifically a science, technology, engineering, math-focused course. It's an advanced placement course in AP biology and human physiology. And it's being taught in a sort of blended model, and we're excited about that. We think that's a way in which we're going to be able to move our STEM activities forward fairly rapidly, in spite of our vast geography and sometimes our district's small size. There are 6 small school districts, Lafargeville and Sackett's Harbor and Copenhagen and Lyme, small districts that by themselves each couldn't afford to provide that AP class or wouldn't have enough kids to provide it, but together they can come up with a class of 25 kids. We at BOCES hired a teacher, a very highly skilled, experienced teacher who teaches the class in an online fashion, but then also goes physically to each of those 6 districts to do the labs. I see that's the way in which we are going to be able to, over the course of the next year, 2 years, 3 years, afford all of the kids in our region those kinds of opportunities, and it's going to move our STEM programming forward, I think, by light years.
Wow, that's an exciting opportunity, and good for you and St. Lawrence Lewis for really, as you say, shooting for the moon. Tomorrow in Malta, New York, there's going to be the inaugural convening of the New York STEAM Collaborative, and STEAM is STEM plus the arts.
Yes.
And this meeting is designed to bring together teacher organizations and individuals who are committed to informing and motivating, in particular girls, to pursue careers in the STEM field and in the arts. And again, a collaborative effort and inter-program communication. Now, I know that there's people from right here at Clarkson who are going to be going to that conference and presenting tomorrow. What do you envision a statewide advocacy group like that being able to do to strengthen what you're already doing in the classroom and perhaps add other capacity?
I think it's going to help people to dream big. Help people to see a model of what it can look like, because all too often we've seen over the years that for whatever reason, too many young women have not been encouraged to go into the STEM fields that they might have otherwise chosen to, had they been given more encouragement, had they been shown examples of successful leaders, female leaders in that field. So I see this initiative helping us with our efforts to make sure that it's not just geographically a universal opportunity, but also there's a gender equity in it, that everybody sees that this is for them. Everybody sees that there are role models out there for them, and that there are examples of the kind of work and the kind of study that young men and women can see as exciting and accessible to them.
And we know those are the jobs of the future,
Yes.
and we know those are the jobs that people in school now have to start preparing for.
That's right.
So,
Steve, you talked a little bit earlier about the teacher who was doing distance learning and then traveling to schools to do the labs, which sounds great. Is the model something like Khan Academy, where each of those component districts can sort of put a disc in and see her lesson whenever it's good for their class? Or do they all have to be sitting there at the same time that she's delivering the instruction?
So yeah, that's a great question. The way it's being delivered right now is it's being delivered in a relatively synchronous fashion. However, this whole program, the Virtual Advanced Placement Program that we're using, the $1.5 million in course development investment, will create a bank of these created online courses that district can use either synchronously or asynchronously. So moving forward, it will provide for that kind of flipped classroom Khan Academy opportunity if that's what a district wants to do. It could be a situation where a teacher in one particular district perhaps has enough students in his or her class and doesn't need to have students from 5 or 6 other districts to fill the class, but wants to use that advanced online, because it's, teaching a course in an online fashion there's a tremendous amount of preparation that has to go into developing the materials, developing the process and procedures. So once these are developed, they can be used by individual teachers from the component districts, because the districts will own this coursework, will own this material. Or they could say, I've got a teacher here, I've only got 4 kids, who's in? We'll teach this synchronously, perhaps through a distance learning opportunity. Who'd like that model? But the sky's the limit once these courses are created.
Excellent. Okay, my next question then has to do with career and technical education. The Regents has endorsed a plan to give students more flexibility in how they earn their high school diplomas with the goal of improving graduation rates and career readiness. Would you tell us what you know about that and how it would benefit a rural area like yours and mine?
We are tremendously excited about the Multiple Pathways Initiative. It's something that we've advocated for. This region and other BOCES around the region have advocated aggressively for the last several years and have been frustrated that it's at some point along the way been tabled or been kind of set aside. This year it wasn't set aside. It was put forward and endorsed just last week by the Board of Regents. Now there's a 45-day comment period for this concept with the initial draft proposed regulations for people all over the state to provide critical commentary and say what should be in this or what shouldn't be in this. And then the hope is at the end of that, State Education Department will be able to incorporate those critiques into a set of regulations which will go before the Board of Regents for final adoption during the winter, which will allow us then to implement it very soon. What it provides is, instead of that one-size-fits-all, everybody must graduate from high school with the same 5 Regents exams vision, which we've had for the last several years. And it really has forced us to look at, trying to push students who are a square peg through a round hole because that's the only option. This allows us 5 additional options. And we all know that every student's got different talents and different gifts. This gives us an opportunity to acknowledge and celebrate and then help students who have different gifts. So instead of all students having to pass the English Language Arts 11 Regents, the Algebra Regents, one of the Science Regents, and the Global History 10 Regents and the U.S. History 11 Regents, now those 2 Social Studies Regents, and the reason it's the Social Studies Regents that are on the bubble here for this is the others are required by federal regulation. So the only 2 that the state has any freedom on are the Global History 10 and the U.S. History 11. A student could still pass those 5 Regents and graduate with the traditional Regents diploma, or they could pass the 3 federally required Regents and one of the 2 Social Studies, plus a rigorous state-endorsed pathway assessment in one of 5 pathways: career and technical education, the humanities, the arts, STEM, and second language. So a student could pass a language assessment in French or German or Latin or something along those lines. Exciting, because it allows us to acknowledge and celebrate all of the ways a kid can be successful. In career and technical ed and in the arts, a blue ribbon panel will be impaneled by the State Education Department, experts who can look at all of the available assessments that are out in the field. And in CTE, that will mean industry, nationally acknowledged industry assessments that already are rigorous, already show success. Example would be when you go to your automotive service place to have your car worked on. You want to see that sign that says that the people working on your car are ASE certified because they passed the assessments that show that they have met the industry standard. Our kids in career and technical ed take that assessment and they leave our CTE programs ASE certified. ASE is one of the assessments, if a kid's in auto tech, that they will be able to use instead of one of the 2, either the global or the U.S. history, to show success in the CTE pathway. And there will be assessments like that in every one of the CTE fields.
And that leads directly to a good paying job.
Very much so. So we're very excited about this.
Yeah.
Donna, do I have time for a follow-up on that?
Sure.
Okay, that sounds great, and I'm very happy, as are many people, of this start. But one of the things that critics have said about the system right now is that we treat students as if, high school students, as if they're all going to major in either English or math or science in college. For instance, we talk about geometry and these theoretical math courses that are given to students. Wouldn't it be nicer if there could actually be a major in hands-on coursework that one usually associates with BOCES and with theoretical mathematics being offered? It seems like we're still stuck with giving kids the same old, you got to take, math, geometry, algebra, trig, etc. Do you see anything coming down the pike in the future to really make a change in how you can get a diploma?
I think this is a step in the direction that will get us where you're talking about, Ann. And already we have some integrated credits that in your career and technical ed programs, BOCES are able to show through their curriculum mapping where the math skills are being taught and emphasized, where the English skills are being taught and emphasized, and in some cases even some science and social studies. And you can actually, within a program, provide students with integrated credits in mathematics, English, to some degree. And I think that's going to grow. I think we're going to have larger opportunities and growing opportunities moving forward to see more of that applied math. If that's what I understand you to say, that really let's make it more relevant to the specific curriculum the student's working on. I think that will grow. We have a little bit of that now, but we could have even more of that moving forward.
Exactly. Thank you.
Well, Steve, once again, this half hour has flown by.
Has it been a half hour already?
It has been a half an hour already. Yes, it has. And of course, there's always more to talk about, so we'll definitely have you come back, and we'll continue this discussion perhaps next spring, if that's good for you.
Oh, yes.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Ann. It's always good to catch up and see what's going on in our local districts and across the North Country. So our time is up. Thank you. These conversations are a production of North Country Matters, produced here in the studios of WCKN on the campus of Clarkson University. This show is a civic collaboration between the St. Lawrence County branch of the American Association of University Women, the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, and the Communication and Media Department here at Clarkson University. Until next time, remember, our North Country matters.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. That was
Steve,
fun.
that was great.